Good morning, all. I welcome you all to a new session of Science and Technology Part 2 for Standard 9. I'm Mrs. Priya Mohorkar from SV Union High School and Junior College, Pune, Maharashtra, India. We are going to start with the lesson number 7, Introduction to Biotechnology. This chapter is going to be very interesting for you all because it's going to introduce to you to a new field of science, that is biotechnology. But before that, we are going to start with the basics of this chapter, right? Which is also new to you. Well, let us start with the chapter. In this chapter, we are going to study about the tissues, right? The animal tissues and the plant tissues under that. Next, the tissue culture, agritourism, and agribusiness. All these subtopics will be covered, but in different sessions, different live session of YouTube. Let us start with things. Now you all must be seeing around yourselves. You find lots of things, lots of objects, right? In which there are two different types of things. One is the non-living things, the other one are the living things. Non-living things generally do not perform any work or any function on their own, whereas living things, they perform lots of work or functions on their own. Okay, now which are those functions that the living things perform? They are the life processes like growth, respiration, nutrition, excretion, circulation, sensitivity, and reproduction. Now you must be seeing that certain objects, certain things which are not performing any function, any work, like rocks, soils, you have certain utensils in your houses, pen, bottles, your books, TV, that is television, refrigerator, earthen articles like earthen pots, crockeries, books, etc. Now, all these, they do not perform any kind of work on their own, right? That is why they are called as living things. Whereas living things, because they perform a lot many functions, like organisms like microorganisms. About microorganisms, you must have studied already. They are the viruses, which are obligate parasites. You all know, you have studied in 8th standard already. The bacteria, the fungi, the algae, all these are the microorganisms. Other living organisms are the plants, animals, and of course us, that is human beings, man. So this is the main difference between non-living things and living things. Now, what are the basic components of things? Let us see. If you consider the non-living things, you must have seen a building. If you see a building being constructed, you know that a building is constructed with the help of bricks, cement and concrete, and of course iron rods or bars that form the skeleton of the building, right? And then you see a large building, you can see a large house built up with all these basic components, basic materials, right? The same way, even living things are made up of certain basic components. The body, we call the building of a living organism, of a living thing, as a body, right? So body of an organism is made up of cells, fluids, and skeleton. Okay, so all these structures together make an organism, right? So here you can see the difference between the non-living things and the living things. Basically the components, basically they are formed of components, but still there is a lot of difference between non-living things and components of non-living things and living things. Can you recall, students, which components brings about important processes in the living organisms? Let us see the different organs, okay, which are arranged in an organ system, bring about different processes in the living organisms. That is why they all function, they all are called as living, okay, they are alive. Which is the smallest structural and functional unit of body of organisms, of living organisms? Right, we all know the basic component of the body of an organism, which is the cell. The cell is the smallest structural and functional unit of the body of living organisms. Now, children, you must have seen your books, isn't it? Like a book, if you look at a book, a textbook, for example, you see that there are small letters of that alphabet, of that language, right? For example, you take English language, you have the letters of the alphabet. The letters are put together and they form what are called as words, right? Words together, when they are put together, they form a sentence, and sentences together form paragraphs of different lessons, isn't it? And different lessons together is found in a textbook, right? If you take a textbook of science and technology, of course, this is how a textbook looks and is constructed, okay? Right, so small letters of alphabet are going to be the basic components of this textbook, right? The same way, let us see the how an organism, or the body of an organism is organized, okay? Now we see the hierarchy of organization of organism. The basic structural and functional unit is the cell, right? A group of cells, when they come together, they divide the labor, they divide their work into different functions, but orderly and together they form what is called as a tissue, okay? So a group of cells which are similar in structure and perform the same function is called as a tissue. So that is a group of cells. You can see the picture. So cells together form tissues. Now such tissues, different types of tissues together forms what is called as an organ. Okay, so in a body of man or human being, basically here two organs are shown. You can see the liver and the stomach, right? So these are the organs which are made up of different types of tissues, right? Now, the organs, different organs like the liver, the stomach, the intestines, the food pipe or the esophagus, the throat, the mouth, all these together form a system in which all the organs are arranged sequentially and they form what is called as an organ system. For example, the digestive system in man, okay? So it's a organized organ system. Now, there are different such organ systems made up of different organs. Okay, now for example, you have the respiratory system, the circulatory system, the excretory system, the reproductive system, the nervous system. Okay, of course, you see here the digestive system and such systems in an organism which are together, they all perform together various functions but in an organized way. So this body which contains many organ systems together is called an organism that performs various different functions for the living organism. This is the hierarchy of organization of organism. The lowest rank or the smallest part of the organism is a cell, that is a structural and functional unit of the organism, and together with different types of tissues, different organs and different organ systems, the body of an organism is formed. Okay, right. Now let us see organisms. You must have heard the organisms are classified into two basic types. One is the unicellular organism and the other is a multicellular organism. Let us see what is a unicellular organism. Okay, a unicellular organism is actually single-celled organism. So an organism which contains only single cell, one single cell. Okay, such organisms where all the functions are performed by the organelles, the small organs of that cell. So such organisms are called as unicellular organisms. For example, you have heard about amoeba, right? Paramecium, right? These are unicellular organisms. So a single cell performs all the functions for that particular organism. Okay. Whereas if you see a multicellular organism, multi refers to many celled organisms. So multicellular organisms in which all the functions are carried out by group of cells which are organized as a tissue. The tissue is organized as organs which are arranged in an organ system, okay, of that whole organism. So these organisms are called as multicellular organisms. For example, you have plants, animals, and of course human beings, man. All these are multicellular organisms. They are all complex organisms. Okay, right. Then let us start with what is a tissue. You have learned in lower classes about cell, right? A cell is made up of different small organs like the mitochondria, the Golgi complex, the nucleus, the cytoplasm, and all these small organs are enveloped inside the plasma membrane of the cell, right, in animal cells. And of course, if it is going to be plant cell, the plasma membrane is covered with a cell wall, right? So basically, the organisms are made up of the structural and functional unit called cells. You all know that. When cells are grouped together, which are similar in structure and perform the similar function or the same function, such a group of cells is called as a tissue. Okay. For example, the movements are performed due to the muscular contraction and relaxation. So muscles of muscular tissue are actually group of muscle tissue which are same or similar in their structure and perform the same function of contraction and relaxation of the muscles, right? The same way in plants, if you see, the conducting tissues, the water conducting tissues and the food conducting tissues help in transport of water and food respectively to all the parts of the plant, right? So these conducting tissues, they may have different structure and of course they perform different functions, but the water conducting tissues of course is a group of different types of tissues again. So such complex tissues are also perform similar functions. Okay. So all the functions of the body occur with full efficiency due to specific organization of cells and their division of work or division of labor, we call it. So when the group of cells having the same origin, the same structure and the same function is called as a tissue. Now let us see the types of tissues. There are two types of tissues. Okay, one is a simple tissue and the other one is a complex tissue. Simple tissues are actually made up of only one type of cells, okay, which are similar in structure and perform similar function, right, or different functions, but they are all grouped together of the same type of cells. For example, the epithelial tissue of animals, or you can take up the meristematic tissues of plants. All these are simple tissues, okay, whereas complex tissues are made up of more than one type of cells. For example, if you take blood, okay, of animals or human beings, blood contains fluid substance and different types of tissues, right? The red blood corpuscles, the white blood corpuscles, the blood platelets, okay, and different other molecules present in the blood plasma, which is a fluid, okay. So blood is actually a fluid tissue, right? So this, because it is made up of more than one type of tissue, it is a complex tissue. The same way, the conducting tissues, which are the xylem and the phloem tissues of plants, we are going to learn further about them. These are all the complex tissues. Xylem is the water conducting tissue and the phloem is the food conducting tissues in plants. Are the structures and functions of bodies of plants and animals the same then? Well, let us see the difference first, okay. Now, plants generally are sedentary, hence the type of tissue are of the type that gives mechanical support, mainly support, okay, mechanical support. Whereas the growth of the plants occur in specific parts of their body. For example, at the root tip, at the stem tip, at the leaf tip, okay. And of course, where the tissues contain dividing cells, okay, that help in multiplying and increase the number of cells and thus help in growth of the plants. Whereas in animals, if you see animals are mobile, or should I say, they move from one place to another place in search of food, in search of shelter and partners. So their energy needs are greater than plants, okay. And if you see the type of growth, the growth seems to be uniform, that is, it occurs throughout the body of the animal, okay, and they do not have different dividing and non-dividing tissue and all. Every cell may have the capacity to divide and increase its number. Got it? Now, this means that plants and animals have different types of tissues to perform different but necessary functions, okay, according to the sedentary lifestyle and the non-sedentary or the moving lifestyle, right? Now, students, just think about it. Why can we not see our organs like the heart, the blood vessels, the intestine, the stomach, the liver, the kidneys? We are not able to see those organs, right? Why is that? Now, as our whole body is actually covered with a thick tissue called as the skin, we are unable to see these organs of our own body itself, right? Okay, so skin is a type of tissue that covers all the organ systems of our body. So we can't see the organs of our own body. So let us today start with the subtopic animal tissues. Okay. Now, in the body of animal, different organs come together to perform a specific function. For example, you all know the digestive system, okay, in which you have the mouth, the throat, the esophagus, the stomach, the small intestine, the large intestine, the rectum, and of course the end of the alimentary canal is the anus. So such different organs come together, are arranged together to perform a specific function. Of course, here in the digestive system, the function is digestion. So different tissues present in these organ systems perform different functions in the organs. According to the functions, the tissues are classified into different types. Okay. Now, the types of animal tissues, let us see. In animals, there are 4 main types of tissues. Okay. So let us see these 4 different types of tissues, animal tissues. First, the epithelial tissue, the connective tissue, the muscular tissue, and the nervous tissue. Out of these 4 tissues, epithelial tissue is a simple type of tissue. It is made up of only one type of cells, whereas connective tissue, muscular tissue, and nervous tissue are made up of different types of cells. So all these 3 are the complex tissues, complex animal tissues. So let us start with the epithelial tissues. Now, epithelial tissue, if you see, They form mostly the protective coverings in the animal body. These tissues are called as epithelial tissues. The cells, if you see in this tissue, they are all closely packed and they form continuous layers also. The cells of epithelial tissue are separated from the cells of other tissue which are underlying the tissues by a fibrous membrane. So there is a fibrous membrane which forms the basal membrane on which these cells are arranged. Okay. Now the skin, the mucus layer of the mouth cavity, the inner surface of blood vessels, the walls of the alveoli of the lungs, etc. All these are made up of epithelial tissues. So if you see, the epithelial tissues are located mainly as protective coverings. They may be outer coverings or inner coverings of different organs in our body. Okay, here you can see a picture of the epithelial tissue of the skin. You all know skin has 7 different layers, right? That is, all these are protective. They protect us. The skin protects us from outer environmental stimuli, okay, which might be dangerous to us. So epithelial tissues are protective tissue generally. Let us see the different types of epithelial tissues now. Now you are going to study 6 basic types of the epithelial tissues here. There are many more different types, but that you will be learning in the higher classes. Okay, let us see the basic types of epithelial tissues. First, the squamous epithelium. Now here you can see the squamous epithelium, right? Squamous epithelium tissue actually is located in the inner surface of the mouth, the esophagus, the blood vessels like the arteries and the veins, and the alveoli, the air sacs of the lungs present in the lungs. So if you see, these squamous epithelium is the basic type of epithelial tissue where it has a basal membrane, and of course the cells are all arranged on that basal membrane, and of course they are all living cells and contain nucleus. So this is the nucleus, and of course the whole simple cells are of squamous epithelium. Squam refers to same type. Okay. Now if you see the structure of the cells are thin, they are small in size, they are of course flat cells, and the cells form semi-permeable membrane. Okay. Now membrane, they form a protective covering, a thin membranous covering. Is that clear? Right, which is semi-permeable in nature. That is the structure of the cells. Now let us see what is the function. The function, because it is semi-permeable membrane layer, the cells will be selective in the transport of various substances. So these cells, this layer helps in transport of substances mainly, right? And of course it is protective. Basically they are protective, forms the outer and inner they form the inner surface of various smooth organs inside our body. The second type is the stratified epithelium, right? Now stratified refers to various strata, layers. So there are many layered cells which are found on the basal membrane. The basic fibrous membrane is present, and you can see the layers of cells which are epithelial cells. They basically, if you see, for example, the outer layer of skin is a stratified layer. The skin is a stratified, is made up of stratified epithelium, which is many layered, and the main function is to prevention of wearing and tearing of organs, and they help in protection of various internal organs, right? So that is a stratified epithelium. The third type of epithelium is the glandular epithelium. Now, glandular epithelium refers to the different glands that secrete various hormones, right? that is a secretory tissue, epithelial tissue. Now you can see here that the glands are present and they secrete. This is what they secrete here. Can you see the secretions and let out their secretions outside their outside that particular gland, and these secretions are poured into the blood stream that carries the secretion if necessary, which may be or may not be necessary for our body. Now these glandular epithelium, of course, are found mostly in the inner layers of skin, or they may form glandular organs. Okay, like you have the thyroid gland, the parathyroid gland, the adrenal glands, the pituitary glands, and so on. Now, so these glands contain the glandular epithelium tissue, which the epithelium which lines the inner layers of these glandular tissue. Now, of these glands, these cells, if you see the structure of cells, the cells contain vesicles, okay, which are packed with secretory material. So they secrete those substances, glandular substances, where the main function of these secretions, for example, like secretions like sweat, oil, which is termed as sebum, okay, oil and mucus, all these are different secretions of various glands. Now sweat is a secretion of sweat glands. Oil, on the skin seems to be slightly oily sometimes. Some of the skins are oily skins. Now why this is all called as oily skin? Because it produces lots of oil or sebum. Okay, the skin, just underlying the skin, these glands, the sebaceous glands, they produce a secretion called sebum, which is oily and keeps keeps the skin oily, right? Of course, mucus is a sticky substance that is secreted by the glandular cells, epithelial cells, so as to keep away the dirt, the dust, and protect the inner layers of the body, okay, inner layers of the or inner organs of the body. So for example, during cold or cough, you produce the cells, the glandular cells of the nasal chambers, right? They produce the mucus, the sticky substance, and let all the infection outside the that particular area, right? So this is the main function of the glandular epithelium. So squamous epithelium, stratified epithelium, glandular epithelium. Let us see a few more different types of other three types of epithelial tissue. The fourth one is the columnar epithelium. You can see here the columnar epithelium. Column refers to long pillar-like, okay, column-like, right? Epithelial cells. You can see here the basal membrane on which the column-like cells are arranged, right? So they actually are located in the inner surface of the intestine and the alimentary canal, okay, that is the digestive system. These column-like the cells, if you see the structure of cells, they are column-like, pillar-like, okay, tall cells and elongated cells. The upper surface bears folds, which are folds made up of these cells at the places of absorption of food. Now in the alimentary, because they are mainly found in the alimentary canal, they help in absorption of food materials. The digested food materials are absorbed by these column-like pillar cells, okay. For the main function is the secretion of digestive juice and absorption of nutrients. So if you see in the alimentary canal, they are found. So the absorption of nutrients is the main function of the columnar epithelium tissue. Now the next type is the ciliated epithelium. The ciliated epithelium refers to the presence of small hair-like structures called cilia. Here you can see small hair-like structures on the surface of the cells. Of course, the basal fibrous membrane is present and the cells are arranged with small hair-like projections on one side of the cells, on the lateral walls of the cell. Now these cells, these tissue, ciliated epithelium, is generally found in the inner surface of the respiratory tracts, right? That is the respiratory system and of the respiratory system. And if you see the cells structure, The upper free surface of the cells bear minute hair-like processes, okay, like cilia. They look like cilia. So the hair-like processes are simply termed as cilia, and hence the epithelium itself is called as ciliated epithelium. The main function of this ciliated epithelium is to push the mucus and the air forward to keep the air passage free of dust and dust particles. Okay, now because they are mainly found in the respiratory tract, it helps in filtering or pushing away the dust particles of the air to keep the air passage free of all these dust particles, right? That is the main function. The next type is the cuboidal epithelium. Cuboid refers to the shape of these cells. You can see these cells are cuboid shaped cells which are placed on the basal membrane. So here you can see this is the basal membrane, okay, basal membrane of this tissue. Now, generally they are located in the tubules of kidneys, that is mainly in the nephrons, which are the structural and functional unit of the kidney, the nephrons, and glands like salivary gland, okay. They form the ducts of the glands. So some of the glands which are called as duct glands, okay. Now the exocrine glands. The cells are basically cuboidal in shape, and they perform the function of reabsorption because they are present in the kidney. Kidneys are going to reabsorb the useful materials from the urine that has been produced there, okay. Urine, which is actually a mixture of water and unnecessary or waste materials, okay. Mainly the nitrogenous waste is being separated or filtered over there, and this urine is being formed now, but the useful materials are being reabsorbed from the urine, and this is being done by the cuboidal epithelium that lines the tubules of the kidneys, okay. Not only that, the salivary glands help in the secretion of the saliva also, right? So this is the main function of the cuboidal epithelium. So which are the basic 6 types of epithelial tissues we studied? The squamous epithelium, the stratified epithelium, the glandular epithelium, the columnar epithelium, the ciliated epithelium, and the cuboidal epithelium. Okay, these are the 6 different types of epithelial tissues we studied. Now let us use your brain power. You all are very smart students. So let us see, why are these epithelial tissues said to be simple tissues? Epithelial tissues are called as simple tissues as they are made up of only one type of cells. That is very, very important. So they are all simple tissues. So epithelial tissues are all simple tissues. Okay, they are called as simple tissues. Now let us talk about the complex tissues now. We learned that there are 3 different types of complex tissues: the connective tissues, the muscular tissues, and the nervous tissue. Now let us start with the connective tissue, which is a type of complex tissue. Why complex tissue? Because they are made up of more than one type of cells, okay, right. So let us see the connective tissues. Tissues which join different parts of the body are called connective tissues. Now the word connective itself tells you that they are going to help in connecting or joining the different parts of the body, right? So connective tissues are those tissues which join different parts of the body, and these, if you look at the cells of these tissues, the cells are loosely arranged with ground substance in the free spaces in between. So there are different types of cells, and of course the ground substance is called as matrix, okay. Now, and you can see there are free spaces also in between them. Here you can see different types of cells: the adipocytes, the mesenchymal cells, the macrophages, the fibroblasts. Okay, you can see the blood vessel going through that tissue, and of course the collagen fiber, that is a protein fiber, the elastic fiber, which is another type of fiber over there. So all these together forms what is called as the connective tissue. So different types of tissues combine together and form a connective tissue. The ground substance may be a solid substance, it might be liquid like water, or sometimes it might be jelly-like also. So matrix can be solid, liquid, or jelly-like, based on which different types of tissues are also formed, connective tissues. Let us see the different types of connective tissues now. Okay, now we are going to study the basic types of connective tissues, which are blood, the lymph, the areolar tissue. We are going to study the adipose tissue, the cartilage, the bones, and tendons and ligaments. Okay, so let us start with blood. Blood, you all know that blood forms a part of the circulatory system. Blood actually, if you see blood, the blood is located in a closed circulatory system in human beings, right, and animals also. Most of the higher animals we are talking about. The closed circulatory system means the blood flows in closed tube-like structures called vessels, blood vessels, like arteries and veins. Okay, and if you see the structure of this blood, it contains different types of tissues like erythrocytes, the RBCs, the red blood corpuscles. The leukocytes are the white blood corpuscles, the WBCs, and there are other type called as the blood platelets, which are found flowing in a liquid, fluid-like substance called as plasma. Now, plasma forms a matrix, and erythrocytes, leukocytes, and blood platelets are the tissue which are found in this blood. So, different types of tissues present, found mixed in a matrix, plasma. Okay, so all this forms the blood, which is a connective tissue. It is simply called as fluid connective tissue. Okay, and the main function of blood is to transport oxygen, carbon dioxide, that is different gases inside our body. Not only that, it also helps in transport of nutrients, heat, hormones, and waste materials also. So main function is transport, okay, in our body. The next type is the lymph. The lymph is actually otherwise known as tissue fluid that flows in the tissues, okay, all around the cells in the body. So it is located in the, mainly in the tissues, spreads in the tissues of the body. And if you see the structure, the fluid oozed out of the blood capillaries, actually that contains leukocytes and liquid ground substance, that is the matrix. Okay, now the main function of this lymph is the protection of body from infections. Now, so blood and lymph are the fluid connective tissues. Let us see another type of connective tissue called areolar tissue. Areolar refers to having air cavities. Okay, they are located generally in between the skin and the muscles, around the body vessels, blood vessels, sorry, around the blood vessels. Now, if you see the cells are different types of cells that are loosely arranged and supported by a jelly-like ground substance, that is jelly-like matrix, and certain fibers called elastic fibers. That is, they help in supporting the internal organs of our body, smooth organs mainly. Okay, such type of tissue is the areolar tissue. The next type is the adipose tissue. Adipose tissue are the tissues which are generally located below the skin, just below the skin, and of course around the internal organs. They store mainly fat cells, fat inside the cells. The cells which are filled with fat droplets and jelly, the matrix is jelly-like. Okay, that is the ground substance. Now these adipose tissues help in insulating the internal organs, act as insulators and mechanical shock absorbers. Okay, not only that, they help in supply of energy because they store fats in them. Okay, that is the main function of adipose tissue. The next type is the cartilage. Cartilage, which is found in the nose, the ear, the larynx, the trachea of our body. Now, nose, The nose, okay, it's of course the hard, but still it is flexible, right? The ear, the pinna of the ear, this is also the cartilage tissue. So larynx is the sound box, right? You can of course see the sound box here, you can feel the sound. And the trachea is a windpipe. Now all, if you see the cells present in these cartilage tissue, the cells are supported by very fibrous, flexible, okay, and jelly like matrix. So these cells, you can see different types of cells arranged in the matrix, which is jelly like. That is why it is the organs, the nose, the ear, they are all slightly flexible. You can move it, but doesn't move on its own, right? You can fold them, but they don't break or they don't tear easily. Now, the main function is to lubricate of this tissue is to lubricate the surface of bones. Okay, it helps in giving support and shape to the organs. That is the function of cartilage. The cartilage, of course, gives the shape to your nose, gives the shape to your ear pinna. Okay, so that is the main function of the cartilage tissue. The bones, you all know very well about the bones. Bones form the internal skeleton of the body, main of the animal body. Okay, we call it as skeleton, which is a specific structure that actually extends throughout the body. In certain animals it might be found outside the body, but in human beings it is inside the body, and higher animals you can see this skeleton made up of bones inside the body, also internal skeleton. Now if you see the structure, it consists of different types of cells, generally termed as osteocytes. Osteo refers to bones and cytos refers to cells. So these are osteocytes present which are embedded in the solid matrix, a hard solid matrix made up of generally calcium phosphate. Okay, because of this calcium phosphate, the matrix is very hard, and that is why bones are said to be very strong, right? The main function of skeleton is to support and protect the different organs of our body. Not only that, they also help in movement of our body, right? So so bones are also a type of connective tissues. And the last type of connective tissues are the tendons and the ligaments. These tendons and ligaments are located at the joints, mainly at the joints, okay, bone joints. Now, the tendons are actually fibrous, strong, and they are less elastic, whereas the ligaments are actually very strong and they are highly flexible, right? The main function of the tendons is to join the muscles to the bones. So you can see the muscles are being joined here. Can you see in the diagram? The muscles that are joined at the bones, there the tendons are present, which help in joining the muscles to the bones. Whereas the ligaments, now where are these ligaments found? They are actually found at the joints of the different bones here. Can you see the joints of the bones? There the ligaments are found. These ligaments join two bones to each other. Okay, so ligaments are the structures, the strong fibrous structures that help in joining two bones at the bone joints, and tendons are strong fibrous but less elastic tissue that help in joining the muscles to the bones. So these are the different types of connective tissues: the blood, the lymph, the areolar tissue, the adipose tissue, the cartilage, the bones, and tendons and ligaments. All these are different types of connective tissues, basic connective tissues. Now let us see how you use your brain power. Come on, try to answer this question. Why do slim persons feel more cold in winter than those who are obese, who are fatty, right? Now, the answer for this question is the obese persons, they store more fat, okay, under the skin, where in the adipose tissue, that acts like an insulator and of course protects the person from cold temperatures. So even obese people have got some advantage during winter. That is, they, because they store lots of fat, of course it protects the person from mechanical injuries, also from cold temperatures. Okay, so that is why the slim persons may feel more cold in winter than those who are obese, right? Use your brain power. Let me see how much you apply your knowledge. Why can bones not be folded? Any idea? Yeah, of course, the answer is in front of you. The bones are actually made up of hard matrix, which contains calcium phosphate, and that is why the bones cannot be folded. Okay, I think you know this answer very well. Right, the next type of animal tissues are the muscular tissues, right? The muscular tissues are actually the forms, um, the special type, formed by special type of proteins called as the contractile proteins, which helps in contraction and relaxation of the muscles. So you can see here the flexion and the extension, where you can see that the muscles are helping in contraction and relaxation. Okay, simultaneously this function is being done whenever we move our hands, right? Can you see here the biceps and the triceps contracting and relaxing when it is needed, when you fold and unfold the arm, right, from your elbow joint. The muscle fibers and muscular tissues are formed from special type of contractile proteins. Contractile proteins like the actin proteins, okay, the contractile proteins, due to which this contraction and relaxation of muscles is possible. The muscular tissues are made up of long cells of muscle fibers, and the muscular movement occurs due to the contraction and relaxation of these contractile proteins. Okay, did you understand? You can see the extrinsic and the concentric contraction here. Here you can see the movements of your arm from the elbow joint, where the biceps, the muscles of the biceps actually contracts and relaxes when we move forward and backward. Okay, the movement being folding movement here. Let us see the different types of muscles, muscular tissues. There are three different types. They are the striated muscles, the non-striated muscles, and the cardiac muscles, right? So the striated muscles are those type of muscle cells which are long, cylindrical, multinucleated, and they don't have any branches. That is, they are not branched at all. If you see the structure of cells, there are alternate dark and light bands on these muscles, and they are attached to the bones. They are also called as skeletal muscles because they are attached to the skeleton. They are called skeletal muscles, and they move as per our will. That is why they are also called as voluntary muscles. Okay, whereas the main function of these voluntary muscles, the striated muscles, are that these muscles bring about movements of the arms, the legs, and they help in running. Of course, they help in speaking, right, these muscles. Whereas non-striated muscles are actually, they contain cells that are short, spindle shaped, uninucleate, and have no branches at all. They are also unbranched tissue. If you see the structure of cells, the muscle cells show dark and light bands. Sorry, they do not show dark and light bands because they are absent. They are not attached to the bones at all, and their movements are not under the control of our will. That is why they are called as involuntary muscles, because they are actually present in the smooth organs like alimentary canal, the blood vessels like arteries and veins. They are also called as smooth muscles. Okay, the main function of these muscles are the movements like for example movements of the eyelids, the passage of food through the alimentary canal, that is we call it as the rhythmic contraction and relaxation, peristalsis or peristaltic movements. The contraction and relaxation of the blood vessels also is a function of the non-striated muscles. Whereas the third type of muscular tissue are the cardiac muscles. Okay, the cardiac muscles are actually the muscles which are found in the heart, mainly in the heart. These muscle cells are cylindrical, uninucleate, and they are branched tissue. Okay, branched muscles. The structure of the cells generally show dark and light bands, and the heart is made up of these muscles, mainly the cardium. The heart is made up of cardiac muscles. If you see their movements, they are not under the control of our will, so they're all involuntary muscles, and they contract. You must have heard it is a part of the respiratory system. Okay, this diaphragm is a involuntary muscle type that actually divides the upper half and the lower half of the abdominal cavity. And the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity is divided into two halves by the diaphragm, which is an involuntary type of muscle. Okay, it is present in the lower side of the thoracic cavity and helps in the increasing and reducing the volume of thoracic cavity during the breathing process. The last type of complex tissue of the animal present in animals is the nervous tissue. The nervous tissue is actually made up of nerve cells, right? And another type of cell called neuroglia. These are the two different types of nerve cells that are present in the nervous system. They form the nervous system of the animals. The nervous tissue enables us to respond to stimuli, which is the main function of this system, like touch, sound, odor, color, vision. All these stimuli are being enabled because of this nervous tissue. The cells of the nervous tissue are especially made to become excited and to conduct that excitation from one part of a body to another part. If you see the structure of the nervous tissue I told you is made up of basically two different types of tissues. One is the neurons or the nerve cells. The second type are the neuroglia, okay, or the glial cells. Now, the nervous tissue, let us talk about this neuron. The neuron contains three different parts. Neuron or the nerve cell, it is made up of three different parts. Okay, first part is the cell body or the cyton. It is called as cyton. The second part is small processes, branched processes called as dendrites. And the third part is a long fiber-like structure called axon, right? So a nerve cell contains dendrites, cell body, and the axon, and is an redifferentiated type of tissue. Okay, now the cell body or the cyton contains the cytoplasm and the nucleus, which is the main part of the nerve cell. There are numerous small branched fibers called as dendrites that arise from this cell body. Can you see? These are all the dendrites that arise from this cyton. Okay, the cell body. One of the fibers, the long fibers, the short fibers, actually is extremely long here, this one, and it forms what is called as the nerve fiber, which is termed as axon. Okay, now many such nerve cells are termed as neurons, are bound together with the help of connective tissue to form a nerve. So a nerve is made up of many such nerve cells. Do you know these nerve cells are not attached to each other? Yes, each nerve cell can easily be removed, separated, if you can, as a single cell just outside, just from the part wherever it is present. The nerve tissue, of course, are forms the nervous system, the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, and the autonomous nervous system, which contains the different types of nerves there. Okay, of course, it forms the brain and the spinal cord, which are the two main organs of the nervous system. Now let us talk about the other type of nervous tissue, the neuroglia. The neuroglial cells do not participate directly in synaptic interactions and electrical signaling, right? So you all know that neurons help in transporting or conducting the nerve impulses like this. Can you see here? You can see a nerve impulse being conducted through this neuron here, isn't it? So conduction of stimuli, respond to stimuli, that is by conducting the nerves signals, electrical signals, is the main function of the nerve cell. Whereas the neuroglial cells, they do not participate directly in the synaptic interactions or in the electrical signaling. Now, what is this synaptic interaction? Let me tell you. Now, if you can see here, that there are different nerve cells. One is, this is a large nerve cell, of course, and smaller and the glial cells around it. Now, the region which is present between this end plate of the axon and between the dendrites of the next or the adjacent nerve cell is called as the synapses. Okay. Which contains certain liquids, that is called as the cerebrospinal fluid, around in which helps in conducting the electrical signals, the nerve impulse we call them, right, which is in the form of electrical signals. So here this region is the synapses, so we call that as the synaptic interaction, and of course the signaling is electrical in nature. But neuroglial cells do not participate in such functions of the nerve cells. They help in the giving support. Their supportive function actually help define synaptic contacts and maintain the signaling abilities of these neurons. These neuroglial cells are smaller than neurons and they lack axons and dendrites. But there are three different types of glial cells basically, okay. I'm talking about three basic types of glial cells, which are astrocytes, the oligodendrocytes, and the microglial cells. These astrocytes are star-shaped cells and they maintain the chemical environment for neuronal signaling. The oligodendrocytes help in speeding up of action potential of conduction of nerve impulse, and the microglial cells are basically the scavenger cells that remove the cellular debris which is found from the sites of injury. Any kind of mechanical injury takes place, or the normal cell turnover during the cell division. So these are the different types of neuroglial cells. That is how the nerve cells, the neurons, are the main type of the nervous tissue, whereas the neuroglial cells are the supporting nervous tissue. So the types of nervous tissue, you can see these are the neurons, and the neuroglia, which are the supporting the neurons here. Okay, these are all the glial cells, right? Okay, the neuron, this is the neuron. Got it, all of you? Right, so you have studied the 4 different types of tissues. Let us just have a look at the summary of this live session. Animal tissues. Today we studied the animal tissues. So basically there are 4 different types of animal tissues we learned: the epithelial tissue, the muscular tissue, the connective tissue, and the nervous tissue. The epithelial tissue, we studied 6 different types of epithelial tissue: the simple squamous epithelium, the stratified squamous, the columnar epithelium, the ciliated columnar epithelium, the cuboidal, and the glandular epithelium. Whereas the muscular tissue, we studied 3 different types of muscle tissue. They are the striated, the non-striated, and the cardiac muscles. The connective tissues, we studied of various types: the areolar, the adipose tissue, the fibrous tissue, whereas the supportive connective tissues are the cartilage and the bones that form the certain organs. Bones form the skeleton. Fluid connective tissue are the blood and the lymph. Whereas the nervous tissue, we learned at the end that they are made up of the neurons and the neuroglial cells. Okay, so that is all. So let us see the summary of this live session. We learned what is a tissue. We learned the different types of tissue, that is simple tissue and complex tissue. We learned today about the animal tissues and their types. We learned four basic animal tissues, which are the epithelial tissues, the connective tissues, the muscular tissues, and the nervous tissue. Thank you all of you for joining me in this live session. We will continue this chapter in next sessions. So please do join us. Keep fit and healthy. Have a very good day. Thank you all of you. Bye.